Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Prabhus, what we're going to do is now start with the tail end of chapter 4 called Transcendental Knowledge. We asked if you would do a little homework and to just get to memorization of the last verse in that chapter. The last verse is text 42, and I'm certainly okay if you learned either the English or the Sanskrit. And better still, both would have been good. But since there's not so many of us on this call, it'd be nice to see if you would like to show off your verse memorization skills and lay it out on us. But I'm going to say I'm the first.
From memory, you have to say.
I'm the first, okay? Tasmad Agyana Sambhutam Ritstam Jnana Sanatana Chidvayamam Samshyam Yogam Atishtotishtha Bharata. Jai.
Jai, nice.
Anybody else would like to say the verse?
Tasmat Agyana Sambhutam Hridstam. What is that?
Jnana.
We'll help you.
Hey, no cheating.
Sinamana.
Jnana Siddharpana
It's close.
Yogam
Chitwai.
Chitvenam Samshyam Yogam
Atishto.
Atishto Bharata.
Bravo.
There you go.
And anybody else wants to try it?
That took whole day.
I can try, Maharaj.
Okay.
Tasmadagyana Sambhutam Hritstam Jnana Hritstam
Yes.
Jnana Asita Atmanaha Chittaivam Samshayam Yogam Atishta Utishta Bharata. And the English yeah, some of it wasn't perfect. I'm still trying, but the English translation is
yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Therefore, Arjuna, the doubt that has arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge, armed with yoga, O Bharata. Stand and fight. I think that's it.
Yeah, excellent. Bravo. You got the English down as well. Nice. And if anybody wants, they can say it in Spanish as well, or French, whatever. I'm okay. I'm okay. Anybody else like to try it out?
Tasmad Ajnana Sambhutam Kritsam Jnana Sinatmanaha Chitvainam. What is that?
Samshayam.
Samshayam.
Yogam.
Atishto Tishta Bharata.
Okay, not bad. Yay, it's coming along. Work in progress. Okay. Anybody else there want to try it out?
You can ask the other verses.
Sorry, I did not get to learn it. I got drug around this week and I could not lock it down. I apologize.
That's okay. What we can do is we'll give you the assignment for next week, and then you got some time there. All right, so armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So the verse, like last week's chapter, conclusion was, assimilate your knowledge, grab knowledge, assimilate it, put it into the world of action. Build up your confidence, okay? Stand and fight. So with yoga, yoga here is generally referred to as bhakti yoga. Let's flip over to karma yoga, action in Krishna consciousness, chapter 5. And I'll read the first verse, okay? Text 1. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" Okay, so what I would like to remark about that is that this verse and the few coming up ahead, I would like if you could just pay a little attention to the Sanskrit words like sannyasam. Sannyasam refers to the persons who are renouncing work. They're not doing regular work. The sannyasi is somebody who's usually a little older. He's already done a lot of work and he's retired. You see, he's retired. And a sannyasi is somebody who oftentimes doesn't do priestly work. Therefore, it is said that a sannyas is somebody who performs no work and lights no fire, meaning that he doesn't get involved so much in rituals. His life is very simplified. So that's the sannyas, the one who really just teaches, doesn't do that much physical work, oftentimes because he's older, and he's very detached from the world. That's the best word to describe sannyas. Now, the other word I was wondering that you could focus in on here in this text, it's the word yogam. So when we say yogam, that refers to devotional service. Yoga meaning union with God, with Krishna through service. So in the next few verses, we're going to see these two words pop up, and these are the two items or lifestyles that are being compared. Arjuna goes for qualification, or let's say clarification rather. He says, Krishna, tell me, there's people who renounce work, they're very detached from the world, and then you have those who are working, but they do it in devotional way. Which is superior? Okay, so Krishna answers them. Text 2. Can I get one of you to recite that verse?
Okay. Sannyasah karmayogascha nishpreyasya kara ubhau. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo visishyate. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work and devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work and devotional service is better than renunciation of work.
Good. So Krishna is very clear about this question and trying to gain clarification. He's saying that both paths are good because it's about detachment from the world. But of the two, the one which encourages attachment for Krishna, for service, that one is a bit better. That one is superior. So again, the words are there, sannyasa, that word appears there, and then we have yoga that comes up as well. They're mentioned twice. So again, two different ways of approaching life. Okay. And so attachment and detachment, these are words that devotees use quite a lot. When we do things in a detached way, that means we're not implicating ourselves with materialistic approaches. Our motive is not materialistic or selfish. And when we talk about attachment, that means being very busy in Krishna's service. That is attachment. So Krishna is clarifying that in text 2, both are good for liberation. Both are good, but one is slightly better than the other. Krishna's splitting hairs a little bit here. That's what he's doing. Okay, so now let us go to text number 3. Can someone volunteer to read that one? A different person.
Okay. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. Oh, mighty arm Arjuna.
Good, good. So basically here we're talking about the person in the renounced order of life. Where he excels in is not getting into hatred, not getting into any campaigns like that, not bearing an enmity towards anyone or anything. And he also does not have a desire, does not hanker. There's no lamentation, no hankering. Such a person is really a sannyasi. And sannyas, as we know it in our tradition, is usually reserved formally by the male gender. However, the female gender is just as renounced when she has the same spirit of detachment. So traditionally, and Chanakya talks about this, he's a kind of moralist, and some people like him, some people don't so much for his quotes. But Chanakya, not necessarily a full-fledged Vaishnava, had some great witty remarks to make, and he was just saying that for women, this formal renunciation of what we call sannyas is not recommended, only because they'll be spoiled, because a sannyasi is to move about freely about into the world, not really caring for a home or a place. And when it comes to the woman who may take this role, she will be in a difficult spot, but socially taken advantage of. So, or could be, doesn't have to be, but so therefore, we're just talking about how social structures were at that time. The spirit of renunciation can be held by everyone, both male, female, their gender, whatever. It's good for all. To bring one to the state of liberation. The last word used in this verse is pramuchate. I'm just bringing you, let's say, directing you to words that you will want to get familiar with. Pramuchate. As they come up in our holy texts, in our verses, you want to get to know them. Okay, so that's talking about the detached person. Okay, now, text number 4, let's go to that one. And by the way, we're going to go to verse 7 today, and we're going to, so you do have time for questions and comments. And the reason why is because this is one strain of thought, and we're calling it work in devotion preferred. All right? So while we're comparing the two types of spiritual paths, one is a little bit better than the other. Okay. Now, somebody can go ahead and read verse number 4.
Okay. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both.
So here again, there's something that's equivocal, that there is we're talking about these two paths once again. The karma yoga, which is talked about as devotional service, and then the other one, the path of detachment, which is followed by the Sankhyaites. Okay? So we have the bhaktas, of which we are part of, and we are the ones that follow devotional service, sometimes called karma yoga. And then we have the Sankhyaites. These are like, we're referring again to those who are detached and practically not working. Both are good. Both can bring one to the same, practically the same results. But again, with the hair splitting strategy, we'll say that the karma yogis or the bhakti yogis are in a better position. Let's talk about Sankhya philosophy. It means to categorize, it means to analyze, to look at the world and list the elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. You got about 24 different items that the universe is composed of. So those who are analyzing this world and taking a lot of time in this endeavor are called Sankhyites. The one important thing to understand,
Maharaj, you're muted for some reason.
the root cause of the world is Vishnu. Vishnu is the root of the tree of the universe. Vishnu being another name of Krishna. And a famous verse that Prabhupada quotes all the time, he says, Na te vidu svargagatim Vishnu. Very few people know that the goal of life is to get to Vishnu. So for these two paths, they're saying the same thing. We have to get to Vishnu. Naturally, when we do devotional service, Krishna or Vishnu is the obvious deity, correct? From day one, when you take up the practice of devotional service, you come to that conclusion. Krishna is it. Krishna is the end, the be all, end all. And it's to his feet that we lie. But the Sankhyaites may take a little time to come to this platform that the end goal is not just renunciation, but it's to get to Vishnu, to get to the super soul, which is another manifestation of Vishnu. Vishnu has three expansions altogether, three layers of himself. And so the very smallest, minutest manifestation of Vishnu is called Kshirodakshe Vishnu. And that is the Vishnu who lies in the heart of all living beings. Okay? So both paths lead to the same conclusion, but we're giving slight preference to the Bhakti Yoga approach. Okay? And we're also, even though we're Bhakti Yogis, it doesn't mean that we should shy away from Sankhya philosophy. And the reason is because there's a whole section of the Bhagavatam devoted to Sankhya Yoga, where one of Krishna's avatars, Kapila, is talking about this to his mom, Devahuti. He's spending a lot of time talking to her about Sankhya philosophy and being very analytical and breaking it down. But Bhakti yogis should also take a little bit of this practice up, so that we can, be a little sometimes philosophical. If you are purely emotional or devotional and you don't have any, let's say, philosophical backbone, you can be a little weak. There were the early days of deprogramming that were happening on in the middle 70s when these so-called professional people were trying to dissuade devotees from devotion. They were oftentimes people who were not with a good motive. They were be paid a high price to get their son and daughter to pull them out of the so-called brainwash, of Krishna consciousness. And so one of our leaders, he wrote a letter to Prabhupada saying, one of our girls was kidnapped by these deprogrammers. And what should we do about this? And Prabhupada's general comment was, then the devotees must read the books. They must, analyze so that it will become so fixed up that any attempt to alter your way of thinking will not be an issue. So that was Prabhupada's remark. He felt great empathy for those who were being taken away by these so-called deprogrammers, but they were not doing a good service. And most devotees who were under their clutches of the deprogrammers, they came right back to Krishna consciousness. So it's good to be philosophical. Prabhupada wants us to be have a little bit of jnaniism in us, to be somewhat of a pundit, Otherwise, we can fall prey to blind, following, or just being a very, let's say, emotional bhakti yogi, and not being able to temper yourself with philosophy. So both are good. Both paths are important. But of the two, again, Krishna consciousness is the best. We are told here that we shouldn't make such a big distinction and draw big lines. And therefore, another lesson from this that we should gain is that devotees should not be too critical of people who are not there yet with bhakti. There is that tendency by devotees sometimes to be vilifying and getting on the case of people who are not quite there at Krishna's lotus feet. But these kind of people that we meet sometimes, who are on the path of yoga and renunciation, they're almost there. And they're good people to have in our company. They're thoughtful, they are analytical. They just need a little more ways to go. And where it makes a difference for us is in dealing with them, is to give them a lot of kindness, show them a lot of love. And perhaps that's what they're kind of missing, is a loving exchange. So just kind of be nice. That's the important thing. Be nice to people and they'll come. And then sometimes we're going to be challenged philosophically. So therefore it's good to have under your belt some understanding of the analysis according to Vedic conclusion. Now, we mentioned before, don't analyze too much. Analysis, paralysis. But do spend some time in that arena. But give quality time to your devotion, to your bhakti, which comes in the form of hearing, chanting, remembering the pastimes of the Lord, rendering service, becoming a humble servant, surrendering everything, etc., etc. 9 processes of devotional service. That's what a bhakti yogi does. Okay. Any questions so far on that? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
So I know you kind of touched on the point a little bit, but Krishna's saying here how it's on an equal level, or pretty much close to that. guess how can we understand that point of view, that they're considered, almost the same one who follows either or path? Does it mean that someone that has great analytical skills, like scientists, they're also learning about the material world and how they can, I guess, advance
Yeah,
from
but
it?
scientists might not be in the category of spirituality because they're not showing any shape of detachment from the world, right? They're really not demonstrating aloofness from this mundane world. They're purely just analyzing. Like they don't even consider themselves spiritualists. So that's the difference. Scientists will analyze, but they won't, let's say, take shelter of or resort to the spiritual component in life. So that's where they fall short. I'd say a lot of scientists in the past, they were somewhat spiritual. And there's one thing that Einstein said. He said, the more I learn about science, the more I know God, the more I understand God. Now, somebody might say that, well, Einstein came to a conclusion that God was kind of he had like a Mayavad idea of God. God as a universal concept, or the Jyoti, you see, the big bright light. That might be true, but even for such persons, we don't want to scoff them. We don't want to criticize them. We want to encourage them in the spirit of devotion. And don't forget that there were the great Kumaras, the four brothers. They were Shantarasa, realized they were, at sort of a neutral, let's say, relationship with the Absolute. But once they came in contact with the form of Vishnu, and basically they became Krishna conscious through their nose. How so? They were in meditation, and they smelled the sweet tulsi leaves. And so they were aroused by the smell. They opened up their eyes, and they saw the feet, the grand, majestic feet of the Lord. And so it all started that way. They were just almost there, and they just had to cross over a line, and they were into the bhakti arena. We have other examples, Shukadeva Goswami as well. And there's others, like I believe it's Bill among those. But there are some saints like that in our lineage or close to our lineage that actually were very renounced and detached from the world and analytical. And they just had to be pushed a little bit, given a little bit of a love shove by the devotees to get them over to the side of bhakti. So, I hope that answers your question. We were talking specifically about scientists, and scientists aren't necessarily spiritualists. Scientists can be big time, let's say, control freaks. And control freaking is another, it's the last snare of Maya. I'm God, I can do so many wonderful things. I can turn soil, I can turn the earth, I can make changes in the world big time, and therefore I am God. We have the ability, we have the smarts to adjust the world. But if you cannot work towards tackling the demons within, which is what both bhakti yogis do, and also the detached sannyasis do. They are, they are taking up a sort of warrior stance. Remember, what was the verse? Tasmad Sambhutam. Okay, so they are taking up the challenge and taking up a fight against Maya, the matrix of the world. So stand armed with yoga, stand and fight. Armed with bhakti, stand and fight. Okay. So that's what these two persons are doing.
I really like that point you made about how one needs philosophy. Prabhupada always gives that famous quote that religion without philosophy is sentimentalism, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation.
Yes, yes, that's right. And that is actually derived from that particular quote from some other pundits, and Prabhupada took it to another level. You know? And with that quote, he's actually saying that let us not become fanatics, you know, but temper your devotion, your feelings, temper your feelings with some philosophy. Be a bit of a pundit, be a bit of a jnani, you know, so that when the time comes up, when Maya strikes, we know how to deal with it. When a scholar comes up and challenges us, you know, philosophically, we have some legs to stand on. And we are supposed to stand, right? Armed with yoga, stand and fight. Now you can't fight if you don't have any weapons. You know? And so that's why we're going through this, you know, just combing through the Gita to become a little more philosophical and to become a much more of a bhakti yogi, one who loves Krishna. So it said we're more prepped. We're more prepped, like if you're going to do some walls and some painting is needed, you can peel it, or maybe you won't, but usually you have to prep the wall, do some sanding, put some, what do they call it, plaster on, sand it again, and then you can roll the paint across. You know? So that preparation work is there, and the prep work is in swadhyaya, cultivating knowledge. It's what we identified before, what the brahmacharis do. Or it's what people do maybe after they are sort of retired or semi-retired. They study, they get a little philosophical, they now have time, and they feel enriched. There's a deeper dimension in their life now than just performing acts of devotion. And I just want to tell you frankly that I've seen a lot of devotees who do puja, you know, and this I've seen over and over again in some of our temples. They do puja and they're so immersed in the deities. But if they don't, let's say, temper or balance their life with a little bit of the philosophical truth, with a little bit of book knowledge and apply themselves, they can, let's say, totter over in one direction. But it's always better to be very balanced and to achieve that equanimity. It's good if we have Brahmins who are not just pujaris or priests, but they're also scholars. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. All right? And when I say scholars, it seems like a high post, but I'm talking at least get some basics down. I'm not this body, for God's sake. All right? So the last one we read was 5, correct?
It was 4. I think we're on 5 now.
We are at 5 now. So let's read 5 then. Sorry, because before I got on here, I just read the verses quickly and I can't remember. Did I read it or did you read it? All right, so let's do number 5. Who hasn't read yet?
It's me.
Okay, go.
Okay. On your mark, get set, go.
One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, see things as they are.
Okay. Okay, so here there's no contradiction in this verse at all. We're just talking about the 2 slightly different approaches, and they are seeing eye to eye, let's put it like that. We're talking about the words that are used here. Sannyas is now replaced by sankhya, and then yoga is still yoga. Yoga means devotional service. Okay? And in this verse, the word Sankhya appears twice, the word yoga appears twice. So again, it's a comparison and analysis of these two spiritual approaches. Okay? So just looking a little bit into the purport, exploring that. One has to find the goal of life. And for philosophical research, the Sankhites, that's what they do. And since in Bhakti Yoga, we found the goal of life. We found Krishna. So that's fine. That was quite easy. And when it comes to the philosophers, the analysis, they also come to this conclusion. Maybe it took them a little longer to get there, but they got there. And that's what's important. So look at the last portion of the purport, just to hone in on the difference between these two approaches towards spirituality. The last two sentences, okay? Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see this sees things as they are. But I'm going to just kind of like psychologically prepare you perhaps a little bit. While that's true, while there's oneness, there's also, what's the word, the key word? While there's oneness, there's also
Difference.
difference. Yes, difference. Hence, we have the philosophy of Achincha Veda Veda Tattva. Okay. So, if any questions here from what we're talking about so far, we are definitely sticking to a theme here. And again, our theme was work and devotion is preferred. Okay, so let's do number 6. Who hasn't read yet?
I can read. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay.
Okay, here's where things tip over a little bit in this verse. Here's where we're seeing that the difference comes through, a distinction. So renouncing activities is very nice. It's very good. But it can't necessarily make you fulfilled or happy. And if we will look at the word which refers to happiness, let's get that flipped with, it's referring to distress afflicts one, no distress. Okay. So it's Prabhupada has brought out the word happiness. So from this verse. So a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. In other words, it's also a quick process. Okay, so up to number 5, we've been saying these two guys are running along side by side. But in this shloka, it indicates that devotional service puts one into a happier condition. If we look at the book Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami is explaining Prabhupada, actually his version of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is analyzing what is the special thing about devotional service. And this is one of the symptoms, one of the qualities. It makes one very happy. So then number 7, just reveals a little bit more. Can we get somebody to read that one?
One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Okay, the whole idea behind these two processes, whether it's renouncing work or working with devotion, is to not get entangled, okay? And the way to get entangled or disentangled from the material world is you have to, there has to be an exercise of devotion. Ultimately, one has to be in pure state of mind. One has to control the mind and senses. And a very good fringe benefit that comes from all of this is that when you're doing devotion, everybody likes you. You like everyone, and everyone will like you. Because the bhakti yogi will see the charming aspect of Krishna in the heart of all beings. And that is very important. So becoming dear to everyone. It comes about by taking the path of purity, conquering the senses, vijitatma, conquering the senses. And then you're liked by all the persons because you have atma bhuta atma, compassion. You have feelings for others. And in such a state, na lipyate, you don't get entangled. And that's where we all want to be. We don't want to have to come back. We sometimes do see people who are on the devotional path and they thrive, they do well, and on some occasions they spring back into Maya's domain. Oh, they have a chance to come back to Krishna's lotus feet, but I mean, it does happen. Once Prabhupada said, do not be surprised with who leaves, but who stays. Okay, so it's not that everyone, stays on this devotional trail, this marga, let's say full scale. It might be that some people go slow on the trail, and they may even leave the trail for a little bit. It's always good to stay on the trail. When you go to national parks, they oftentimes have signs, stay on the trail. And if you don't stay on the trail, you'll get distracted. You'll disturb a lot of the ecological layout by nature and so on like that. And you could be, roaming in a territory that you should not be on. So stay on the trail. Yeah. Stay on the track. So those are 7 verses that we have looked at that fall under the theme of work and devotion preferred. Okay. So we were talking about oneness. I just want to bring it back to that one. Oneness and also difference. Now, an interesting thing that you must look at is flip back to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is called practically the same thing, karma yoga, being active in Krishna consciousness. Is there a difference between the 2 chapters? Well, if you want to compare them, there are a lot of similarities. In chapter 3, Arjuna is saying, you tell me that I should be intelligent in what I do. Well, to be intelligent means to not engage in warfare. But then you tell me to engage in ghastly warfare. I am a little bit confused in this area. Arjuna took it that intelligence means to go to the forest, to be quiet, be a pacifist, maybe even activist, an activist pacifist. And then, so that's what Arjuna surmised that Krishna was telling him. But then Arjuna was saying, but you're asking me to engage in this ghastly warfare. I'm just very confused. Engaging in this warfare doesn't seem very spiritual to me. So Krishna is helping to clarify that the path of action is the best. The path of action is the path of service to others. Right. And if any of us here on this line, we think that we can actually sit down in the forest and just chant all day, 64 rounds times 64, whatever, and that will come out successful as a yogi, well, soon you'll find out they're really just a bogey. We've seen devotees try to do that, chant all day, and it wasn't recommended. One devotee was, well, Prabhupada was informed that one of his disciples went to do that, just chanted all day. And Prabhupada said he will not, he will stop doing Haribol after a while. And that's exactly what happened. So I've been to different yoga studios, and they do, of course, they do the pranayama, asanas, and so on like that. And then they also have a time in the retreat place where they have what they call karma yoga, which means to be very active, more like devotional stuff, like practical stuff, not just sitting down, but being practical. So practical service is devotional service in as much as sitting down and being nice, being quiet. No. So Prabhupada had come up with so many things that we could do to keep ourselves busy. And he was very, very practical also at the same time. He gave us things to do: book distribution, life membership program, cooking for the deities, installing, keeping the temple clean, going out and Sankirtan, meeting, making new friends, doing some home visits, and so on and so forth, And it was a very outgoing time, and it was evangelical, like in spirit, but that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood, and that is the mood of our acharyas, to share this wisdom. I'm just someone's coming into the room here, and I think he's giving me a birthday gift.
Oh,
Thank you so much. I won't say who it is, but he's being very kind.
wow.
What is that?
So,
Thank you, Acharya. All right, good. And we will use this in Krishna's service. Okay, we will use it for service to Prabhupada. So, does anybody have any questions or comments?
What's your favorite aspect of devotional service, Maharaj?
You want to get personal with me, buddy? Okay.
Yes.
Or
I like
personal aspect,
personalism.
I don't think I can point the finger to put my thumb on one. I like chanting. I like prasadam. I love sitting down in the Bhagavatam class. I enjoy walking for Krishna. I enjoy putting dramas together for Krishna. Like working with the youth. I like sorting out problems. I love to counsel people. And so it's all good. It's all good. The only thing I haven't figured out is how to surrender to Krishna. So we'll try to get there one day.
Maharaj, I have a comment.
Trying to call in. Yeah.
You were mentioning about staying on the trail. Here in Florida, if you don't stay on the trail, you get eaten by gators.
That's true. That's another reason why you have to stay on the straight and narrow path. Yeah. Don't divert. The whole idea about gurus and mentors is they try to keep you in line. Otherwise, we have the wayward mind, which where we're we get easily teased, and we get go to the wayside. And it's very true. Stay on the path which is meant for you, and don't dabble into other areas. Krishna makes a point about that. Don't meddle into other people's areas, even if you do a fairly good job. Better to stay and stick to what you're prescribed to do. That word, like prescription. Don't follow the prescription given by the pharmacist. And don't try to make up your own ideas. Don't and of course, if you take too many pills, you know what happens to such people. They might not wake up in the morning. Yeah.
I have a question, one more question. So when you say that if somebody decide to sit and chant for a long time, what really happens there?
Well, some people do so prematurely, and we have seen some young individuals do that. It's practically not a good idea when you're in your passionate years. That comes a little more natural later on when you physically are somewhat slowed down. And there's no harm in such a thing. But in training, it's good to practice the balance and do some things that allow you to sit, some things that allow you to move around. A little bit of both is good. There's a higher rate of success in the people's Krishna consciousness, not failing on them when they balance like that. On the other hand, if you prematurely play the role of a vairagi or a sannyasi, that's not good. We've seen young men take the sannyas, and it was oftentimes it came out to be disastrous. We know that risks were taken. Even Srila Prabhupada took some risks. One just has to be extremely careful. One has to be ready before taking the next step. So we have our obligations to follow, either as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and we also have the obligations to follow the ashramas, the brahmachari, the grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. These are the stages we go through.
So, okay to say that if somebody skips one of those stages, they have a lower probability of succeeding?
No, Maharaj.
It can be, not always, because it's you take the blessing of the Guru who keeps an eye on you. Like Prabhupada was very kind to give Bhaktimarga Swami a quick initiation first and second. And then even the third one came, very, very soon after that. It was very like bang, bang, bang. It's at the discretion of the Guru, but I wouldn't make those decisions purely on your own. It's better to have some consultation. And just like Arjuna is going for consultation from Krishna, he's just being very careful, and Krishna is delivering the goods. Arjuna is asking the questions just like he is in this chapter 5, and Krishna is answering all those questions. So we want to go for details. Details are important. But if you're going to move on a whimsy, kind of like what you feel is right by the whims of your mind, then again, it spells disaster. All right.
So Maharaj.
Yes.
So we see you yourself took sannyas very young, and I'm just wondering how, even for us, we may have gotten initiated, but sometimes we'll have, inclinations to fall back into Maya or just the subtle things. So how did you stay so fortified throughout your life, I guess, to stay inspired and, not fall away or fall down, so to speak?
Well, I think a key thing is keep busy. We're all bees and we have to make our honey. So, know what you have to do. And there's not much room for distraction. You just keep yourself very occupied. Somewhat balanced. Don't overwork yourself to the point of some people are able to multitask a little bit, but usually it's advised to take a step at a time and just keep very occupied, so that there's no room for Maya. Let's take that analogy of the cup of milk. It's so full of milk that if you even one drop of ink goes in there, it'll spill over. So just your day must be full with activity, with bhakti. So like you're a young grihastha and you've got a bundle to handle. You got a little baby, you have your spouse, your partner, and a purvi, and then you've got bills to pay, and you've got various services to do, and you got work, and it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing for you to have things to do. The people that are most miserable are the ones that are not doing anything, or they do not know what to do. So,
I nod my head. Yes, Maharaj.
yes, well, sometimes it's also important that we heal or we recuperate from a problem. That means doing almost nothing but adjusting, thinking, reading, hearing, seeing, singing, and so on like that. We just have to keep ourselves busy, and that's the nature of the human being. We should be. We're not built like a bear or a male lion who likes to sleep a lot, or a sloth. We're meant to be very active, keep busy, and then you are happy. For those who are inactive, you are just setting yourself up for failure. You're just in the tamagun mode of ignorance, and the mind will just creep in and take over. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. That's for sure.
All right. I have a question.
Yes.
When you were saying we need to consult, um,
When we need to consult,
who I mean, when we consulted, we know in history of ISKCON, it didn't really necessarily work out like that. So,
yeah, I'm sorry, I missed. Somebody was trying to call in, so I missed your question.
well, it's hard to put that faith in someone.
That's
And
right. Well, who do you want to put your faith in? What kind of a person are you thinking? That can give you some counsel. Who do you think? What should be such a person's qualifications? That person should definitely be trained. That person should be should have a reputation for doing things in confidence. Now that person should have a good regulated life and control of the senses. How can you trust someone who can't control themselves? So I think there's some prerequisites for such individuals who are, if you want to trust in someone, they have to have a good program, good regimen to follow. And they have to be honest. And yeah, reputation is pretty much everything. It should be definitely like a Brahminical kind of person in most cases. A Brahminical person is very broad-minded, thinks for the world in a big way, sees the big picture, is the visionary, and just as somebody, a good listener, somebody who can empathize. Those are some of the qualifications of a good counselor. How good was Krishna and Arjuna to each other? They listened to each other. Right. They were good listeners.
Yeah, Krishna waited for a chapter to finish, to start counseling.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Krishna waited for a chapter to finish before he started it. He was a good listener.
Yes. Yes. If you listen, you can lead. And if you read, you can lead.
He let Arjuna went out.
can you repeat that, what you said?
If you listen, you can lead. And if you read, you can lead.
Mm-hmm. Right. When you said, about when you retire, you tend to study more. I thought this is probably what we are. We technically retired in one
You
sense.
are. And so now you arrange this program weekly, and you're studying with greater depth than before, right? So it's a good use of the human form of life, that phase you're going through. It's good. And let's say somebody's, fallen sick, they might need a lot of rest, but extra time can be given to hearing and chanting. Hopefully a person can be nursed back to health and then be able to do good things for others.
Hmm.
I think I should go soon.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you very much. We will see you.
Thank you very much. Though, please, if for next week, have that verse learned to smile again, the Sambuddha. Okay, and try to learn the translation as well.
Sure.
For those of you who didn't have a chance, please do the best you can. And if you can't get the Sanskrit down, please get the English down. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Jai, thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Jai. Haribol.
Pushpa Srimati Bhaktimarga
Give me my
Swami
phone.
I'm trying to leave.